How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Pei Dalet, Daf 84 of Masechta Gittin. Friends, today what do we talk about? Different kinds of conditions when it comes to Gittin. Alright, what do you want me to tell you? Alright, so we're going to start on Daf Pei Dalet Amud Aleph, second line of the page. Interesting. So a fellow gives his wife a get, and he says, "This is your get under the condition that you marry Reuven." Okay. Harezo lo tinase, she shouldn't get married. If she does get married, then she can stay married. She doesn't have to get divorced. The marriage doesn't have to dissolve. Micah Omer, what's going on? So Omer of Nachman says, "Of Nachman Ochi Komer." This is pshat. Harezo lo tinase lo. She should not get married to this fellow, right? Meaning, a husband divorces his wife and says, "You're divorced under the condition that you now marry Reuven." So Rav Nachman says she should not marry Reuven. Shema Yomru Nishayan Nostin B'matana, so that people shouldn't say that that he's giving his wife as a gift. Okay, you're divorced from me, now you have to go marry Reuven. Right? His wife isn't a gift that he can give to somebody else. Vim nises la'acher. Now, if she got married to somebody else, not Reuven, she married some guy named Shimon, lo teitzei. Okay, beseder, she could remain married to Shimon. So what just happened? What happened was, the condition of the divorce was that she marry Reuven. We don't like the way that this looks, because it looks like he's giving his wife as a gift to Reuven. So Rav Nachman says she should not marry Reuven. Instead, if she marries Shimon, she could remain married to Shimon. Now, the crazy thing about that is that, look, whether we like it or not, whether we like the way that this condition looks, that maybe it looks like he's giving his wife as a gift to Reuven, the fact of the matter is, there was a condition of the divorce, right? You're divorced under the condition that you marry Reuven. She can't go and marry Shimon now, even though we don't like the way that the appearance of the condition of the get. Okay, we might not like it. We might say, okay, don't marry Reuven because it doesn't look good. But the fact of the matter is, the condition of the get was that she has to marry Reuven. She can't go and marry Shimon. So how can we say that, and if she marries Shimon, she could remain with Shimon? The condition was that she had to marry Reuven. And because of this gezerah, that we don't like how the get looks, that we don't like that it looks like he's giving his wife as a gift to Reuven, she can remain now married to Shimon. We're allowing a married woman to now be married to Shimon, even though she violated the conditions of her divorce from her original husband. So Ela Omer of Nachman, so rather says Rav Nachman, Hochi Komer, this is pshat. Harezo lo tinase lo. Look, ideally she should not marry Reuven. Shema Yomu Nishem Nosnim B'matana, because it looks weird. It looks like her original husband is giving her as a gift to Reuven. Vim nises lo, but if she does marry Reuven, okay, so lo teitzei. So she could remain married to Reuven, Timshum Gzer lo mafkinon, because, look, we don't like the way that it looks. It looks like he's giving his wife as a gift to Reuven. So therefore she shouldn't marry Reuven. If she did, okay, beseder, we're not going to make her get divorced just because we don't like the way it looks. Amalei Rav says to Rav Nachman, look, there's something about what you said that I don't really like so much. Rav Nachman had said, Hariza lo tinase lo. She shouldn't marry him. She shouldn't marry Reuven, implying Lohu de lo tinase, she shouldn't marry, I don't know what I just said, she shouldn't marry Reuven. Hale'acher tinase, but it sounds like she could marry Shimon. But doesn't she have to be Mekayim the Tanai? The condition of her divorce was, you're divorced from me under the condition that you marry Reuven. So how could she go and marry Shimon? The Tanai is for Reuven, right? Because Rav Nachman had said she shouldn't marry him. She shouldn't marry Reuven, implying that she could marry Shimon, and if she marries Reuven, she can remain married to Reuven. Seder. But how could she marry Shimon? The condition that needs to be met is that she needs to marry Reuven. V'chitema, and if Rav Nachman you're going to say, Efshar, Rashi switches around these words, so I'm gonna read it the way Rashi has it. Efshar demigarsha hayom ulamacher umintzimba lamacher umekayim letnoya. But Rav Nachman, maybe you'll say, well, she can always be mekayim the Tanai later, right? Let her get married to Shimon now. She doesn't want to get married to Reuven. She wants to get married to Shimon. Let her get married to Shimon now. The condition of her divorce was that you're divorced from me under the condition that you marry Reuven. Marry Reuven in 10 years from now. Right? As long as you marry Reuven at some point, so then you're divorced. She's divorced from her original husband. So maybe what Rav Nachman is saying is that she could marry Shimon, just at some later point she'll have to marry Reuven in order to satisfy the condition of her original divorce. And Rav Nachman, it sounds like you're comparing this to the machlokas that you had with Rav Yehuda in Masechta Nedarim and Daf Yudalad Amud Beis. If I'm not mistaken, this was the daf in Masechta Nedarim where the microphone. I completely lost the entire audio. I had to re-record the entire daf. I think it was this daf in Masechta Nedarim. Yeah, since then I've gotten a new microphone, but we've still had some issues with the microphone. I mean, just the other day I had to record about 10 minutes of a daf. I don't know. What do I do? I really don't know. What am I to do? Sometimes the audio just gets lost. I mean, what should I do? I can get probably a better mic. I mean, I can get better gear. I don't know. But I like to keep it pretty lightweight because, even though for the past few years I rarely leave my house, which is kind of crazy. But, like I did, for example, travel to America the other day, and like I need to be able to just pack up my stuff easily, the mice, I think I'm gonna leave my house today, actually. Anyways, okay. And maybe what Rav Nachman, by saying that you can marry Shimon now and marry Reuven later, maybe it's like the argument that you argue against Rav Yehuda in Masechta Nedarim, the itmar that it was stated, Konam einai b'shena hayom, I'm not allowed to sleep today, im ishan lemachar. If I sleep tomorrow. If I sleep tomorrow, then today I'm not allowed to sleep. So the question is, can you sleep today? You could technically sleep today, as long as you make sure not to sleep tomorrow. But if you end up falling asleep tomorrow, and you also slept today, then you're in trouble. So I'm Rav Yehuda al yishan hayom. So Rav Yehuda says, look, don't sleep today, because who knows what tomorrow will bring? Shem yisha lemachar, just in case you end up sleeping tomorrow. At least, thankfully, you didn't sleep today. So don't sleep today, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Rav Nachman Omer yishan hayom ve'ein choshishin shem yisha lemachar. And Rav Nachman says, no, you could sleep today. That's fine. We're not concerned that maybe you'll sleep tomorrow. Look, the Tanai is that you're allowed to sleep today. Just make sure you don't sleep tomorrow. So if Nachman says, look, you could sleep today, just make sure you don't sleep tomorrow. So we see here as well, right? Marry Shimon now, just make sure that you marry Reuven later. But those two cases are not comparable. When it says you're allowed to sleep today as long as you make sure not to sleep tomorrow, or right, really technically he's saying fakert, that I'm not allowed to sleep today if I sleep tomorrow, but meaning Rav Nachman says you could sleep today, just make sure you don't sleep tomorrow. The ibai machris nafshe b'silvasa. But over there, it's entirely in his hands, because look, if he sleeps today, then he has to make sure he doesn't sleep tomorrow. How can he make sure he doesn't sleep tomorrow? With needles and pointy things and things that are going to make sure that his eyes don't close and make sure that he stays awake. Like, it's possible to force yourself to stay awake. But over here, is it up to her for her to get divorced from Shimon? She can't force Shimon to divorce her. And therefore, Rav Nachman, how can you say that she could marry Shimon, just make sure that you marry Reuven later, as if it's up to her to marry Reuven later? What if Shimon doesn't want to divorce her? Then she'll be stuck. So because it's out of her hands, out of her control, Rav says you can't just say marry Shimon today and make sure to marry Shimon Reuven later on. Rather, Rav says, rather, says Rav, if her husband divorces her under the condition that she marry Reuven, says Rava, she shouldn't marry Reuven because it looks like she's been given as a gift. She also can't marry Shimon because the condition is that she needs to marry Reuven. Lo tinose shem yomu nushaseim nosnim b'matana. She shouldn't marry Reuven because it looks like the people are giving, it looks like his husband's giving her as a gift to Reuven. Le'achilon tinose, she also shouldn't marry Shimon because he has to be Mekayim his tonight, which is to marry Reuven, and he can't marry Shimon if he hasn't married Reuven. Vimni says lo, but if she does marry Reuven, even though she shouldn't because it looks like she's being given as a gift, lo teitze, she could remain married to Reuven, lo mafkinon, because we're not going to, make them get divorced just because of this gezer of we don't like the way that it looks. Mishum teitze lo mafkinon. La'acher teitze, but she can't remain with Shimon, because she has to be kind of tonight to marry Reuven. Okay, there's some noise going on outside. Dang. There's noise going on outside. Interesting, I haven't had as much noise. You know why? It's because it's the summer here in Eretz Yisrael, and I've been recording with the air conditioner on, which makes some noise, but I think it affects the quality of the audio, honestly, because I have to pull out stuff. I have to pull out all that noise from the background from the air conditioner. But because of it, I think I haven't been hearing as much noise from outside. I'm recording in the morning because I think I'm going to leave my house today. So it's 9:45 in the morning. I never record in the morning. And I don't have the AC on. But now I'm hearing more stuff from outside. Dang. Yanki Lazar. Tana Kavasi de Rava, we have a brisa supporting Rava. Arezo lo tinose lo lov lo la'acher. She should not get married to, neither to Reuven nor to Shimon. If she marries Reuven, she could remain married to Reuven. La'acher teitze, if she marries Shimon, then she cannot remain married to Shimon because she has to marry Reuven. Okay, hopefully the noise is going to die down soon. Interesting ha'ara with the air conditioning. Okay, let's go weiter. Tana Rabbanan the rabbis taught. Okay, this is your get under the condition that you go up to the sky. You go up to the heavens. That you go down to the abyss. It's a condition that you swallow a reed that's 4 cubits long. Under the condition that you bring me a reed that's 100 cubits long. Under the condition that you cross the Mediterranean Sea or the Great Sea, maybe the ocean, with your feet. All of these are like ridiculous things. Eino get, so Tanakama says, it's pashut, it's not a good get, right? The get is null and void if you make a ridiculous condition. Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema cause a get. Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema says that this is a get, that this condition is just ridiculous, and therefore it's irrelevant, and the condition is cancelled, the get is valid. Klal Omer Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema has a general rule, Kol Tanai Shei Efsher Lo Lekaimo Besofo, any condition that is impossible, Visna Olav Mitchilaso, and you make a Tanai, that the get is only under this condition, which is impossible to be met. Einu Ela K'mafliga B'dvarim, he's just being an idiot. B'chosher, and so the condition is cancelled, the get is valid, and it's a kosher get. Omer of Nachman, Omer Rav, Halacha Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema says of Nachman, Omer Rav, that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema. Omer of Nachman bar Yitzchok says of Nachman bar Yitzchok, Masnisin Namideka. We also have a Mishnah in Bav Metzia that supports Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema. Kol she'efsher lo l'kaimo b'sofo v'isna olav b'tchilaso. Any condition that is able to be met, and you make it as a condition to know kaim, it's a valid condition. Ha'efsher to know batul, implying that if it's an impossible condition, then it's just cancelled, it's irrelevant. Shmamina, so there you have it. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema says that if you make a condition that's just ridiculous, so then it's cancelled, it doesn't exist. So you have the get without the condition, and it's a kosher get. So now things get kind of interesting. Ibaylu de asa kasha. Hareze gitech amanas shetochli b'sar chozir. Very, very interesting. This is your get under the condition that you eat pork. This is your get under the condition that you eat pork. Aitaka wants to remember. Interesting. Very, very, very interesting. Very, very, very interesting stuff. Very, very interesting stuff. This is your get under the condition that you eat pork. So this is it's kind of a funny thing, right? On the one hand, you could technically eat pork, right? You could take pork, put it in your mouth, chew, swallow. You'll be chayiv makis, but you could do it, right? It's physically possible to do it, but it's usur. So do we say, well, the fact of the matter is that he's making a condition that is usur, and therefore it's essentially considered not shaykh, not applicable, and it's basically the condition is cancelled because it's a ridiculous condition? Or do we say, look, I mean, it is possible to do it. It's usur midorais, you'll be chayiv makis. It's possible to be done. It's not a cancelled tonight. It's not an irrelevant tonight. So, this is your get under the condition that you eat pork. Mau, Amr Abai. Abai says it's basically the same thing as walking across the ocean. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's cancelled. Forget about it. It's not a valid condition, and it's a kosher get without the condition. Rava Amr, look, Rava says, look, I mean, it's also midoraisa, bichayiv makis. It's able to be done. You know, if she does it, she's divorced. Do we recommend it? I imagine not. But, you know, it's a condition that is possible to be done. Le'abaye klal le'asuye b'sar chazir. So according to Abaye, when Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema says, as a general rule, any condition that is unable to be met is not a valid condition. So this general rule comes to include, for example, eating, if he says under condition that you eat pork. The Rava kozeh lemute b'sar chazir, whereas Rava says that when Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema says kozeh get, that like this is a get, that's to the exclusion of, right, because Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema had said two things, right? He said by these ridiculous conditions, kozeh get, like this is a get, because the condition is cancelled. But he also says klal, right, what was it? Klal Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, that he gave a general rule. So kozeh, like this, is exclusionary. Klal, a general rule, is inclusive. So Abaye says that the klal, the inclusionary thing, is coming to include in the rule pork, whereas Rava says kazeh get, this is a get to the exclusion of pork, because pork, the condition is valid and would have to be met. Meisve, we have a kasha. Harei ze gitech. This is your get. Amanasha tibali liploni. Under the condition that you have beer with ploni. Niskayim atnai raise a get. Vim labeno get. Okay, if she has beer with ploni, she's divorced. If she doesn't have beer with ploni, she's not divorced. Okay. Amanas shelo tibali la'abo u'lavich. Under the condition that you do not have beer with my father or your father. Ein choshishin sheba niva laloed. So it's a kosher get. We're not concerned that maybe she had beer with her father or with his father. Now, conspicuously, however, v'ilu amanas shetibali la'aba u'la'avich lo katani. But what is left out of that brisa is if he says this is your get under the condition that you do have beer with my father or with your father. It sounds like that's just, it's not a relevant condition. It's not a relevant condition. And if he says that, it's cancelled. It's irrelevant. So that sounds, la'abaye nicha. That makes sense according to Abaye, right? Having beer with, his father or her father is also midorais. It's one of the arayis. And therefore, it's essentially the same thing as eating pork. Just like eating pork is irrelevant, so also having beer with his father or her father is an irrelevant tonight. So this makes sense according to Abaye. Rava kasha. But according to Rava, I don't understand. What's the problem with that tonight? she could technically have bia with her father or his father. It's also midoraisa. It's one of the arayas. I believe she'd be chayiv karis. But nonetheless, I mean, physically speaking, it can be done. So why is it left out? So Amar lach Rava will respond, look, bishlama b'sar chazir. Look, when it comes to eating pork, efshar ta'achla v'lakya. Look, when it comes to eating pork, it's entirely up to her. If she wants to eat it, eat it. There's nothing outside preventing her. Ploni nami. And even when it comes to having bia with ploni, look, if he's willing to have bia, so then they can have bia. What if she wants to have bia and he doesn't? Okay, she can try to convince her, give her incentive, whatever, pay him, whatever it is, try to, convince, get him to do it, right? But, wow, that noise is still there. It's so annoying. Please, noisy people, can you go somewhere else? Ella, Yanki Lazar, Ella Abba v'Ovich, but says Rava, having bia with his father or her father is a different story. Bedida kaima, is it in her, is it entirely up to her? Granted, she might be okay with doing the isur if it means that that's how she can get divorced. But who says that her father or his father would be willing to do this isur? That's like a red line that there's no incentive that they'd be willing to accept. And therefore says Rava, when it comes to so when it comes to pork, so Beseder, it's entirely up to her. We might not encourage it. It's also midaraisa shel b'chayiv makis, but she can technically do it and there's nothing stopping her from doing it. But even Rava would admit that when it comes to having bia with her father, with his father, that is not a valid condition because it isn't up to her to do. I mean, if her father or his father is not, it's a red line that they're not going to do, be over an avera arayis, so then therefore it's impossible, and therefore it's irrelevant. So I'll tell you, Be'etzim, there's a baby crying out in the park, crying very loud, and apparently the baby's been crying for a few minutes, and it's just, it's a little bit hard to focus because as I'm trying to this this is intense stuff, you really got a hot cup, and then just hear crying in the background. Yanki Lazar. Okay, fine. So the Rave Klal, so according to Rave, when there's the general rule of Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema of these impossible conditions, well, that's coming to include, for example, his father or her father, that's just an impossible tonight. Cause they get when it says this is a get to the exclusion of something else, to the exclusion of eating pork, that would be a valid condition. Abai, according to Abai, klal, when it says the general rule, it's coming to include even eating pork. That would be considered an impossible tanai. Cause a get, this is a get, lemute ploni, to the exclusion of having beer with ploni, because that is technically a valid condition that would have to be met. She has to have beer with so and so. Meisve, we have a kasha. Hareze gitech amanas shetochli b'sar chazir. This is your get under the condition that you eat pork. And if she was a non-kohen, under the condition that you eat truma, that a non-kohen is not allowed to eat truma. If she was a nazira, under the condition that you drink wine, which of course a nazira can't drink wine. Niskayim matanai, I raise a get. If the condition is met, it's a get. V'imlav eino get, and if not, it's not a get. L'rava nicha. Well, that sounds exactly like Rava. That's exactly what Rava has been arguing. That if a fellow says, this is your divorce document, on the you're divorced in the condition that you eat pork, says Rava, look, at the end of the day, she's only divorced if she does it. That's exactly what this brisa is saying. Abaye kasha. It's kasha according to Abaye. Abaye says that in this case, it's ridiculous. It's not a relevant tanai, and that's that. Right? And therefore, the tanai is irrelevant. To get his kosher without it. So labai kasha. But what about this? What about this brisa? So Omar lach Abaye will say to you, look, I was just saying that according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, it's not a shaykh tanai. I was just saying according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, it's not a shaykh tanai. According to the rabbis argue and would say you have to be mekayim the tanai. Rabbi Yisavar divrei akol. What, do you think that this brisa is according to everybody? Hamani Rabbanani. This is the opinion of the rabbis who say that you would have to be Mekayim the Tanai. I was saying, according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, you would not have to be Mekayim the Tanai. Okay. So now, Frekti Gemara. 1 second. How could it be that you could make a Tanai that this is your divorce under the condition that you eat pork? Right? It's a masna mashakos of a Torah. You're making a condition on an isser midoraisa. The Torah says you're not allowed to eat pork. You can't make a condition such as you're divorced under the condition that you eat pork. You can't use an isser midoraisa as a condition. If a fellow makes a condition based on an isser midoraisa, the condition is irrelevant. So how can you condition the divorce on her eating pork? When we say that if a fellow makes a Tanai, based on an Isser Deoraisa, the Tanai is bottle. For example, if a fellow gives Kesef Kiddushin to a woman and says, Ariat Mikudeshes li, under the right, you are married to me under the condition that you don't get any food, clothing, and bia. So now those are chiyuvim, right? Sherik susa bonosa lo yigra. Right, the Torah says that that these are things that he needs to provide for. So do ka'akar, and by giving her the kiddushin and being mekadesh her under the condition that he will be denying her sherik susa bonosa, which is right. It's a direct result of his kiddushin that he's being me'aker these things. I'm sorry, dehu ka'aker. Sorry, that what I was about to say is going to be the next part of the Gemara. Dehu ka'aker, he's the one who's being okeret. Aval hacha I ka'aker, but over here she's the one eating the pork. So when he's being mekadesh a woman and says under the condition that you won't have sherik susa v'onasa, so he, the one making the condition, is the one that's also being violating these mitzvahs. But in this case, he's the one making the condition, but she's the one eating the pork. And therefore, it's not considered masna mashakos b'torah. Maskef lo Ravina, but Ravina says, I don't buy it. Klum ka'akra I el l'kume l'tanai dide? What do you mean? She's only eating the pork because that's the tanai that he made. It's his tanai that ultimately is leading to eating the pork. She's only eating it because that's a tanai that he made. He's the one who's causing the pork to be eaten by a Jewish woman. If he wouldn't have made the Tanai, it wouldn't have happened. He's the one who's causing trouble here. Rather says when we say that if a fellow makes a Tanai, a condition based on Avera in the Torah, Tanai bottle, the condition is bottle. That's by Sherik Susa Vonosa that it's certainly violating a mitzvah in the Torah. He's being mekadesh her, he's giving her the kesef kiddushin, and he's saying, I'm giving it to you under the condition that there will be no sherik susa v'onasa. So he's directly uprooting these mitzvahs. But over here, mika amala lo sagya to lo achla, is he saying you must eat pork? Lo seicha v'lo sigar. She's saying, look, if you want to get divorced, you have to eat the pork. Don't eat the pork, don't get divorced. He's not forcing her to eat the pork. He's saying, so therefore, you know what? Don't eat the pork. Don't be over in Issa Doraisa. Don't get makis. But you're not divorced. So he's not. So when it comes to the Kiddushin, he's giving it to her. And he's saying, I'm being Mekadesh under the condition that we're going to violate mitzvahs Doraisa. That's a problem. But over here he's saying, look, if you want to get divorced, eat the pork. Don't eat the pork. You'll still be married. He's not forcing her to eat the pork, so it's not necessary that he's violating it, and therefore that anybody's violating anything, and therefore that's why it's not considered masna mashakasuv batorah. Kate said, "Yaisi it lenu imena v'chulei." So the Mishnah had said that if a fellow says that you are divorced except for Ruvain, so the Chacham say that's not okay. So what do? You take back the get and you give it back, and this time say you're just divorced, full stop, to everybody. So Mantana, so who's the one who says that he would have to take it back and then re-give it? Omer Chizki Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Says Chizkiah, that's the opinion of Reb Shimon ben Elazar. The Tanya, we learned the Brayso. Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Omer says Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Ad she'itlenu emeno, v'yachzav yitnenu la, v'yomer la hey gitech. Do you remember this? Where was this? This was on Daf Ayin Ches Amud Aleph. So about a week ago. We saw a few different examples. One of the examples was if a fellow gives his wife a get while she's sleeping. While she's sleeping, he puts it in her hand. She wakes up and she reads it and she's like, holy shnikes, this is a get. So Rebbe had said, he has to say to her, hey gitech. Right? That until he says to her, hey gitech, this is your get, she's not divorced. But when he says to her, hey gitech, this is your get, now she's divorced. Reb Shimon ben Elazar said that's not enough. He has to take it back from her and then re-give it to her when she's awake. So let's say that this Mishnah, which says he has to take it, right? If he says you're divorced from everybody except for Ruvain, the rabbi said that's no good. He has to take it back and re-give it to her. That is the opinion of Reb Shimon ben Elazar. So again, Mantana Amar Chizkiah says Chizkiah, Reb Shimon ben Elazar, he the Tanya, Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Amar says Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Achid lenu emana. He has to take it back from her, v'yachzav yitnenu la, and give it and re-give it to her. V'yomer la yagitech, and say to her, this is your get. Rabbi Yochanan Amar afilu tema Rebbe. Rabbi Yochanan says, you can even say that Rebbe would say that in this case, he would have to re-give it. Dilchon Amar. Dilchon says, who's Dilchon? Says Rashi, it's Rav Kahana. Dilchon, yours. Rav Kahana came from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael to learn from Rabbi Yochanan. We're going to learn about it in Bava Kama. Right, we have to learn Masechta Kiddushin first, and then we get to Masechta Bava Kama. At the end of Bava Kama, it talks about Rav Kahana moving to Eretz Yisrael to learn by Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan killed him, brought him back to life. Upon him. So Dilchon, so yours, Rav Kahana from Bavel says, Shiny Hacha, it's different over here. In this case, he would, even Rebbe would say that he would need to re-give it. However, kana also the possible lichumuna, right? Because after all, right, we had said, right, because of reach haget, right, that if a fellow gives a get to his wife and says you're divorced from me and you're still usher though to anybody else, so that's him. She's stuck, right? She's divorced from the husband, but she can't marry anybody else. So that's not a good get. But still, she wouldn't be able to marry a Kohen. She'd be a divorcee vis-a-vis a Kohen. She wouldn't be able to marry a Kohen. I assume that what that means is that if he's a Kohen, she wouldn't be able to stay with him, I imagine. Anyway, so because there's some validity to this get, at least that it makes her also the chahuna, so that's why he would have to re-give it in order to make things right. But in the first case, Rebbe would say, no, hey gitech is enough because she hasn't actually received anything yet. He has to say hey gitech in order to make it work. Okay, fine. Alright. So in this case where he says you're divorced from everybody except for Ruvain, so then, you would have to, right, even if you would say that you're not, even if you would say you're not allowed to marry anybody, it would be, she wouldn't be able to marry a Kohen. Certainly over here, she wouldn't be able to marry a Kohen, and therefore he would have to there's some kind of validity to it, and therefore he would have to re-give it. Fine. Kosvu besocho. Okay, the Mishnah had said that if he writes this condition he actually wrote it and hard-coded it into the get, then it's too late. He can't even erase it. Then you're stuck. Rav Safra kosvu besocho tanan. Rav Safra says, specifically we're talking about if he wrote it into the get. Pshita, isn't that obvious? Kosvu besocho tanan. I know. The Mishnah says, if he specifically wrote it in the get. Yeah, but ma'u detema animili la'achar atorif. I may have thought that davka, if you wrote it in the get, then there's no way to salvage it. That's only if you wrote it in the get after the torif, right? The torif is the most important part of the get. So after the most important part of the get, right, such as the names and the time and stuff, after the most important part of the get, so then only if he wrote it into the get, then it's irreversible. The damage is irreversible. Avalifnei torif, but before the torif is written, before the main part of the get is written, afilu al peh nami pasul. If the husband would say to witnesses, right, write this get under the condition that she can't marry Ruvain. So then, since they're then going to go and write the most important part of the get with this in mind, I might think that even al peh would be a problem. Kamash Malon, we're saying that no matter what, it's only irreversible if it's written, if it's hard-coded in the get. But even prior to writing the Torah, if he said to the witnesses, write it that we're going to write the get under the condition that it's that she can't marry so and so, but then but then at the time of giving it, he says even if it was so if it's al peh, so even if he said to his witnesses that we're going to write it under the condition that she can't marry so and so, but when she gives the get, he says that you're permitted to everybody. So in that case, it would be okay, right? I have no clue what I just said, but there was a havmina to say that that writing it makes it irreversible, only only if it was after the Torah. But before the Torah, even before the Torah was written, even if he just verbally said to witnesses that we're going to write this get under the condition that that she can't marry Ploni, maybe that would be a problem even if you didn't write it. So Kamash Milan, that no, Davka, if you wrote it, even if it's before the Torah, Davka, if you wrote it, that's where it's a problem. If it's Baal Peh, you can always fix it. Okay, fine, right? At the time that you give it, you say it's under the condition that you can marry whoever you want. Fine. Komaj Malon. V'Rava Omar, whereas Rava says, Lo shanu elo la'achar Torah, where Rava Taka does say that, right? He says that, no, that when we say that a davka, if it's written, it's irreversible, that is only after the Torah has been written. Aval lifnei Torah, but if the Torah has not yet been written, afilu apeh nami posel. Even if he simply verbally said that we're going to write this get under the condition that she can't marry Reuven, even though it's only verbal, since the Torah has not yet been written, it is a problem. That Rava goes according to his reasoning, that Rava said to the people who read Gittin, Shasku shasuke liba'al, make sure that the husband keeps his trap shut, ad dechasvisu le'letoriv de until you write the get. Because if he doesn't keep his trap shut and he says that it's under the condition that she can't marry so and so, well then he's going to be in trouble. So keep his trap shut until they write the Torah, then he could say whatever he wants. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Kol atnoyin poslin beget, that all of the tanaim, any of these tanais are posel by get. If you write into the get any of these conditions, even if you're later Mekayim the Tanai, it's posel divrei Rebbe, that's Rebbe's opinion. The Chacham say, look, koshe posel al peh, posel b'chsav. Anything that would be a problem if it's al peh, when he gives her the get, he says, right, for example, in the Mishnah, the Chacham said that if he gives her a get and says, I'm giving you the get, you're divorced from everybody except for Reuven, right? We said chutz, the rabbis say that, right, that it's unacceptable. So then posel b'chsav, if you write chutz in the get, so that's going to be a problem. Posel al peh, but something that is not posel al peh, right? We said that the Mishnah is dafka by chutz, but by amanas, the rabbis would admit that's a valid tanai. So then eino posel b'chsav, if you write almanas in the get, so then that's okay. Chutz sheposel al peh, so chutz, which we said in the Mishnah, is a problem if he says to her, you are divorced from everybody except for Reuven, posel b'chsav, so that's also a problem if you write it in the get. Almanas she'eno posel al peh, almanas which if you say under the condition that you don't marry Reuven, which the rabbis, right, we said that the rabbis agree with Eliezer there, at least in our Mishnah, that is just a regular condition. Eino posel b'chsav will not be posel if you write it into the get, whereas Rebbe says no, even almanas would be posel. Omer Reb Zer says, Reb Zer machlokas lifnei Torah, that this machlokas between Rebbe and the Chacham with regard to if even almanas is a problem to write into the get, lifnei Torah, that's only prior to the Torah, the Rebbe Sofer Garzin and almanas atu chutz, that we make a gezerah even by almanas out of concern for chutz, which we know will be a problem. Rabbanan Tzarvi lo Garzin on almanas atu chutz. The Rabbi said, nah, almanas is okay, and we're not concerned that you might end up writing chutz. But after the Torah, the Re'akol, kosher, everyone would agree after the Torah that almanas is kosher. Rebbe would not argue that almanas is a problem after the Torah. Umasnis in dekatoni kosvu v'ukimna b'chutz, and now our Mishnah, which says that kosvu is a problem, and we're saying that it's talking about davka chutz, right? But almanas would be okay. Aval almanas lo pasul, but almanas is acceptable. So iba yisema lifnei haTorah v'Rabbanan. So either you could say that almanas is a problem according to the rabbis. Almanas is acceptable according to the rabbis before writing the Torah. Viba yisema la'achar haTorah, or you could say it's after writing the Torah v'divrei hakol, and that's according to Rebbe as well, right? Everybody agrees that once the Torah is written, you can write almanas. The Rave Omar, whereas Rave says no. Machlokes la'achar haTorah. No, the machlokes is davka after the Torah. That if it's before the Torah, so then everyone agrees that you cannot use almanas out of concern for chutz. But after the Torah, so that's where there's a machlokas. Rebbe is concerned after the Torah out of concern for before the Torah, whereas the rabbis say we're not concerned after Torah out of concern for before the Torah. So machlokas la'achar Torah, the Rebbe savar gazrin and atu lifnei Torah. The Rebbe says that even almanas after the Torah is a problem because we're concerned about almanas before the Torah, which everyone agrees is a problem. Whereas the rabbis say that almanas after the Torah is okay because we don't make a gzera out of before the Torah. But before the Torah, divrei hakol, pasul, everyone agrees that it's pasul, masnisin dekatoni. And our Mishnah which says kosvu, that dafke if you wrote it, v'ukimna b'chutz, and we say that it's by chutz, aval almanas lo pasil, and almanas is okay. La'achar Torah v'Rabbanan, that's dafka according to the rabbis after the Torah has been written. Tani Avua de Reb Oven Kame de Reb Zera. Avua de Reb Oven taught before Reb Zera. Now remember, Reb Zera had said that the machlokas is dafka before the Torah, but after the Torah, everybody agrees that almanas is acceptable. So now, Tani Avua de Reb Oven Kame de Reb Zera. So Avua de Reb Oven taught before Reb Zera. Kosav get al Tanai. So if a fellow writes a get al Tanai, divrei hakol pasul. Everybody agrees that it is pasul. Everybody agrees, right? If it's almanas, everyone agrees that it's pasul. Now, according to Reb Zera, you never have a situation where everybody agrees that it's pasul. Before the Torah, it's a machlokas. After the Torah, everybody agrees it's kosher. So divrei hakol pasul. Divrei hakol pasul. What do you mean everybody agrees it's pasul? V'amipalig plige. They argue. Rebbe says it's pasul. The rabbis say it's kosher, and that's just before the Torah. After the Torah, everybody agrees it's kosher. The aim of the divrei hakol kosher. Rather say, no, according to everybody, it's kosher, be'echidami la'achar Torah. Now it would be after the Torah, according to Reb Zera. V'leima areze pasul v'Rebbe. Why not just say that when it says, instead of divrei hakol pasul, just say hareze pasul. It is pasul, and that's just the opinion of Rebbe. Tana divrei hakol asnaye. Well, because Avua the Reb Avinu, who was teaching this brisa, he heard from who he learned it from, divrei hakol, that it's everybody, and therefore kosher b'pasul michalefle, that, and therefore if it's, he may have gotten confused, was it divrei hakol kosher or divrei hakol pasul? He thought it was divrei hakol pasul, but really it's divrei hakol kosher, and it's talking about after the Torah. Harezeh b'divrei hakol lo michalefle, but he wouldn't have confused that this harezeh versus divrei hakol, meaning he definitely heard divrei hakol. He may have confused kosher or pasul, but he didn't confuse whether it's divrei hakol or harezeh, and therefore we're going to assume that it's divrei hakol kosher, and it's talking about after the Torah. Friends, that was Av Pei Daled of Masechta Gittin. I hope you enjoyed. Peace out.